Hello, everybody. This is Shawn Harwell. You are listening to the Never Heard of It episode. Doing a mini episode today. This is episode 44.5, and the point is on point. I don't know what that means, but I'm happy to be joined today by the one, the only
Tom Brady.
Wow.
Hello.
I was not expecting that.
Glad to be here on your sports show.
Hey, Tom.
No, I'm Craig Moorhead, of course, and this is the podcast where we talk about the things that haven't totally fallen through our cracks. These mini episodes, of course, we're going to talk about things that are going on that might be a little more popular at the time to talk about. Sometimes we want to be popular. We want to be thought of as popular. We want to be well-liked.
That's weird, though. I do think that flies a bit in contradiction with our guest that we have today. So let me, without further ado, welcome back to the show, Mr. Brian Crane.
Hey, guys. Happy to be back.
Hey, Brian.
Enemy of the people, Brian Crane.
If you haven't listened to our episode on the Paul Schrader film, The Comfort of Strangers, written by Ian McEwan.
Yes.
Adapted by
that guy.
Playwright. What was his name?
Oh, yeah.
Shakespeare?
Yeah, it was Shakespeare. He came back from the dead. He's a good writer as a zombie.
It was such a get.
You know the only way we can find out the answer to this?
Oh, it was...
No.
I know the answer.
If we wait
now,
long
but
enough,
go ahead.
he'll come up with it.
No, I was going to say the only way we can find out the answer to this is to go listen to the episode.
Ah,
That's right.
that's a good point.
That's the only way.
Let's do that right now in real time. The playwright is Harold Pinter.
Yes,
He's the
Harold Pinter,
one.
of course.
Pinter.
And that was a lot of fun. And you also joined us on the episode where we talked about the Wachowski siblings, their first film.
Bound.
That was a good podcast.
That one. That was a good podcast.
It's doing pretty well in the numbers, too.
Yeah.
People like to listen to the ladies. That's what I hear.
That's taught us a lesson.
I'm getting flipped off. So on that note, let's move on then, and let's talk about a little piece of news that popped up recently. And Craig, I sent you this link, and then Crane, I think we clued you in as well. And this is a tidbit of information via the AV Club that they are possibly working on a sequel to the classic Eddie Murphy Arsenio Hall comedy, Coming to America. And it's been a while since I asked you this, Craig, and Crane, I'll ask you as well. Is this peak nostalgia?
Brian, as our guest, I insist you go first.
It does seem to be of a piece of that trend. It's like, I don't know whether it would be more peaky nostalgia if it were a reboot as opposed to a sequel. I feel like sequel is true peak nostalgia because then you're going to bring back all the people and it's going to continue the storyline. But I mean, I understand the impulse to remake things, but for classic movies, I mean, Coming to America has aged very well. It is a good, funny movie.
Agreed.
Does it need to be revisited? It kind of reminds me of the Ghostbusters thing, where for forever they were trying to get a Ghostbusters sequel going, and it's like, at a certain point, it's just like, don't do that. It's done. And but yes, peak nostalgia. Yeah, I think we're there.
Craig, counterpoint.
Here's where Brian's wrong.
Okay, good.
In the world of film, no, I think that I don't. On the one hand, I don't want them to revisit this because generally revisiting something is a terrible idea. Although apparently Trainspotting 2 was not a terrible idea from what I've heard. So it does kind of feel like if they can do something where, I don't know, Murphy actually comes back, they get as much of the original cast together as possible, and it's actually funny, then let's revisit that. But I'm certainly not clamoring for it. There aren't a lot of unanswered questions from the original.
No, they kind of addressed everything.
Except for, can Eddie Murphy play more characters in this movie?
I think the answer to that would be yes.
Yeah.
And here's basically all we know from that article, and that is that the original writers of the film have been hired by Paramount to write the sequel.
Yeah, and that doesn't thrill me. I mean, I don't want to be ageist or like.
It sounds like you're about to.
I'm gonna be, but it's like this. They are not going to be capable of providing a fresh new take. I would be interested if it were some writer who had like this real reverence for the movie. It's like all I want to do is make a new Coming to America. And it's like, okay, fine, you did it. This is your passion project. Let's go. But to bring in Barry Blaustein and David Sheffield back from out of deep freeze, it doesn't seem promising.
Wow,
that was me.
Wow, Shawn, counterpoint.
I will say this: if the whole movie took place in Africa, I'd watch it. I mean, to me, that's enough of a thing that's different. And it's like, okay, let's flip the script. Let's go to Africa. He's been living in America for 20 years. He's got a wife, his kids. They're all assimilated basically to this culture. Take him out of it. And I could see that. But also to your point about the movie holding up well, I do think the makeup effects are extremely good in that movie, especially, when Eddie Murphy and I think both Arsenio Hall play older white men. It looks great. I mean, there's been so many far worse versions of that done recently, and not nearly as good, I don't think. So good on them. That's John Landis directing, so obviously he's worked in that film before.
Was that Rick
Indeed.
Baker?
Did the makeup?
Yeah,
I mean, probably. It's definitely somebody.
Yeah, I think it was him. He's good.
I'm going to dump some news on you here that maybe you guys did not see, and it just dawned on me, sorry, before we started recording that I wanted to talk about this, so here we are. Yeah, Marvel once again is hiring directors to do a movie that I think are probably a little unexpected as far as taking on a superhero tentpole, and that is that they got Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck to do the Captain Marvel movie. And I know really nothing about the character of Captain Marvel, but I do believe this is going to be Marvel's first solo female superhero film that they've done. And I know Brie Larson is attached to play that character. But I do know about Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. I've seen it's kind of a funny story. And they've also done Half Nelson with Ryan Gosling, and then Mississippi Grind recently with Ben Mendelsohn and Ryan Reynolds. Obviously just very solid indie street cred. Mm-hmm. And yeah, now they're being handed the keys to a big Marvel movie. I don't know if either of you guys maybe know about that character perhaps. But again, it just seems, and no offense to the DC world and what they're doing over there at Warner Brothers, but it just feels like Marvel once again is getting it right. I think even in this article, they reference the guy there who's saying, look, we can give our directors all the accoutrements they need to kind of handle the scope of something like this. But what we can't teach and replace is character and story and filmmakers that know how to do that well. And it seems like, yeah, it's just worked out so well for them so far, and you can see it on the screen. Thoughts?
Well, full disclosure / name drop. I know the author of the books that they're basing this on. Really? As far as I know, Kelly Sue DeConnick. And so I have some of the books that she wrote, and I would just say a part of the reason that it kind of makes sense to me to have these particular folks directing the movie is Kelly has, and therefore the book has, a very good sense of humor that I think you need someone who's not a tentpole action director to handle. And I think they will very possibly do a very good job with that, because I think there's so much about the personality that Kelly Sue kind of brought out in Captain Marvel that has kind of brought Captain Marvel back to be a kind of a major player in the Marvel universe. So that's my own hot take.
What is Captain Marvel's power?
Just being marvelous.
That's fantastic.
I have heard that she is the most powerful character that will exist in the Marvel universe once she has a movie.
Wow.
Right. So more powerful than Thor, all those guys. So I guess she's kind of
the super man, super woman.
Well, it sounds like what Kelly did with Captain Marvel is a little bit like what a little guy named Matt Fraction did with Hawkeye. in that took a character who no one thought much about and then just completely reinvented it and made him a really compelling, dynamic character. And I guess what happened here was with Captain Marvel is Kelly did that with her, and now she's kind of a big enough property where they can turn that into a film. I don't know much about her. She was. I got into comics around '89, and there wasn't anybody talking about Captain Marvel back then. So I missed her. I didn't catch that wave. So I don't know. But then again, look what they did with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly.
Nobody knew that. So it's exciting, and I think Shawn's right. Marvel is making all the right moves, and DC is making all the Zack Snyder moves, and we see where we're going with that.
I like this. Crane is just cutting through it,
Man.
taking down names.
All bridges burned.
Let me ask you this. Is this a movie you automatically check out, or do you need a trailer to kind of seal the deal and get you in the theater?
Need a trailer. Okay, need a trailer.
Well, I
Craig?
mean, I'll definitely automatically check it out.
Yeah, you know the
I'm
books,
sort
so
of the
you're-
built-in audience. Yeah.
Do you think this will be something that, girls of what age will be going to see this?
I think it'll be quite a range because it's a pretty PG book.
Cool.
20-something party girls,
So it could be
kind of the Sia crowd.
You do have the pulse on 20-something party girls, don't you? I know this
Yeah,
about
they
you.
follow my column.
Let's talk about another big company in Netflix. So there was a big article that went around and a total opinion piece by David Ehrlich for IndieWire. And this was about Netflix acquisition model where, essentially they are buying and making indie films. And I think the financing usually comes in typically after the movie's been made. I think the example they gave is this really small movie that was bought in the $2 million range. And so they're buying these things, usually stuff that's performed well at festivals, and then putting them on Netflix. And that seems to be it. There's no fanfare, and you end up kind of lumped in with all the other content on there. And so I was just kind of curious. The article definitely gets in its snarky comments, which makes it a good read. But, I do think this is a modern problem worth talking about. You've got a movie, with Brad Pitt coming out at Netflix, I think next month, and they've made Beasts of No Nation. And, they put some money behind these things, but, maybe with arguably mixed results. We don't really know the numbers. So I don't know. I mean, where are we at with this? Do you think it's a good thing to sell your small movie to Netflix? Or is there still a better option out there via the theaters and the more traditional model?
That's a good question. I mean, when I read this, I felt like what was happening was David Ehrlich was sort of more upset with sort of entrenched trends than he was specifically with Netflix. I mean, the fact is people are going to see movies less. They're watching Netflix at home. The other fact of the matter is that indie movies are harder to finance, harder to get people to see them. I mean, all those things are at play. So the fact that Netflix is another buyer and they're actually paying, I think, really good money. I mean, the movie in question called Tramps, the director was so happy when Netflix bought it. He was crying, and because he knew that everybody who helped make the movie would be whole again. And it's like, I don't know if there's really any reason to feel real sadness for this guy because Netflix is not doing a good enough job of marketing these movies and letting people know that they're on Netflix to watch. I feel like if Netflix is putting that much money towards these movies, then it's warranted. They're getting enough viewers to warrant that kind of outlay of cash. So I know they're secretive with how many people are watching this or that, and I disagree with that. But is this movie going to have more people see it because it's on Netflix than it would if it had a limited release in Los Angeles and New York? My guess would be yes. So he's getting more money for it than he might otherwise have, and more people are seeing it. I'm not sure that there's a whole lot to be upset about. But I mean, all that said, I still take his point. Like, it would be better if it were a better system. But I'm not sure I agree with the intensity of his grievance.
Counterpoint, Craig.
Brian, here's where you're wrong.
No, please tell me. I love it.
In the film world,
Oh wait, we weren't talking about comics still. Oh,
No.
sorry guys. This is not comics deep.
That's all right.
no, I agree with. I mean, I agree very much with what you said. The thing I kept thinking about was, we had, I guess through the late 90s, early 2000s, maybe, everyone's talking about how all filmmaking has just been democratized now. Like everything's getting cheaper. It's getting cheaper to make these films. So there are just thousands and thousands more films out there to watch. Of course, nobody's watching them because they're not going anywhere. There's nowhere to watch them. Mm-hmm. So then you do have something like Netflix, where maybe there is a place for a lot of these movies, that they can actually be housed. Like, movie theaters are shutting down generally, unless they're a multiplex where they're not going to show the movie that you made for $500. But maybe, if it's of a certain quality, Netflix will buy it, and there will be a place where people can watch it without you having to send them like a DVD. And it's a pretty good presentation, and maybe they'll put a little bit of weight behind it. Maybe they won't. Yeah, I mean, it makes me feel kind of sick to think like you would work so hard and you would actually get a company like Netflix to invest in your movie. You'd make that movie, and then it would basically be up to you to let anybody know about it. Like, that's kind of ridiculous for as big a company as they are. It just seems that there's the technology is there to get these movies in front of people in a better way. And honestly, the other thing I just kept thinking about was they're a big enough company where they could be maybe doing more positive things for the actual movie-going experience. Like, they're big enough, I think, to change some of that culture. I don't know if they're buying these movies. I mean, yeah, even if it's like limited runs in theaters and so on, it'd be nice to know that Netflix was kind of helping out there. What do you think, Shawn?
I don't know. I still think eventually they're going to have to do some type of traditional theatrical release, and I think a bit more than what they did with Beasts of No Nation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you're saying, we don't know the numbers on Netflix. I mean, they were happy to tell us that something like over 5 million views have occurred for some of these Adam Sandler movies they've made, which is insane.
Insane is a word for it.
Yeah, but it's like you were saying, you can feel the pain of a filmmaker who puts everything into making a really small independent film. They have this great sale, and then there you go. I guess it goes into somebody's queue, which they may never actually get to. Or you're lumped right beside all these other things which aren't related and relevant, or even new, or they just might be complete garbage. And so I think that's the trick. If the bottom line is just about acquiring content, this thing where, our library has 2 million titles and Amazon's only has 1.7 million. I think that's a really dumb arms race that doesn't really benefit anyone. And I've experienced that being involved on a show that is on Amazon. Sometimes it's hard to find the dang show. I remember going to a meeting there right after they'd put out their first round of shows, and I couldn't find, Alpha House or whatever it was, on the iPad app. Like, it took forever. And that's insane to me. You control the distribution and the presentation of it all. Put it front and center. I'm okay with that. Yeah. I expect that when it's your own content. And they do it for some, and they're getting better at it, I think. But it feels much more ironed out on the TV side in some cases than on the film so far. And I think, these places will figure that out, or filmmakers just won't be as keen to sell to them.
Well, how do you think Netflix could fix it? Is it just a matter of like a marketing campaign, TV commercials, or do you think it's even just on the opening front page, like freshly added? Because right now it's so locked in by algorithm. It's like, because you watch this.
But that's the thing. It's like I still don't think their algorithm is all that great. You have to filter through so many different titles. It's hard to find your own list sometimes, or your queue, and that's what's nuts. So if they have all these metrics and data on us, use that to better push those movies that they buy and that might be perfect for us. Expand that audience, get those people who might like Tramps if they knew about it based on their previous viewing history, and introduce them to it. They know so much about our viewing habits. It feels like still that front page of Netflix, especially it just needs more work on that front.
Agreed.
Good.
We're all agreed.
Solved.
Craig, why don't you walk us through this little article that you found and that then quickly disappeared? This crazy thing that the Blacklist, which is an entity that was originally an industry-only thing set up as a query of agents at the various agencies to find the best unproduced scripts of each year. And they still do that, but now, they've also kind of extended their realm to beyond that. They offer feedback and consulting services to, pretty much any writer, whether you've gotten your script through the gates of Hollywood or not. And now it looks like they're also venturing into the world of AI. This almost read like a joke when I first clicked on this. How did you find out about this story in the first place?
Yeah, well, here's where you're wrong, Shawn.
It's not a joke.
In the film world, no. Yeah, so it was kind of bizarre. This link went around pretty fast yesterday, where the Blacklist, which did have a pretty well thought out system of sort of filtering scripts that you could send them scripts and they read it and rank them, and people were paying attention to that a good bit, at least in some circles it seemed like. Anyway, but then they said they're going to add this component where you can, for a measly $100, you can get a 4-page report made out by some software that analyzes your script, and it tells you what genre this most likely is. And to start off with, if you don't know what genre your script is, don't spend $100 on your screenplay yet.
Yeah.
But then it would say, who's your most sympathetic character. Here's where this script would rank with movies on a sort of bizarre creativity and audience score scale. There's some very and then what is most likely, what is your production budget and all that. And it seemed like kind of an April Fool's prank in a way, like going through it and just thinking I don't know. I guess first of all, why would you want to pay anyone to give you their opinion on your script? I can see why. But then even more so, why would you want to spend that much money to have a computer tell you these things? Because if you really start, I don't know. I don't know what the insight would be. That would really, the amazing insight. You're not going to go to somebody and say, well, a computer said this will cost $10 million. And they'll look at it and say,
does Skynet want to make your movie? That's a question I have. If they're into it, you're golden for a long time. Or dead. Well, the Terminators will watch it.
Yeah, I was trying to think about this in a devil's advocate kind of way. And I do think that maybe... Right. Like, say, I'm writing a treatment right now, so it's a short little document, kind of outlines a movie without being scene by scene, and one of the harder things to do is to figure out a really good comp. Sometimes those things aren't completely obvious, right?
Sure.
You think of this movie that did well when you're reading this, and so you always have to have those. Yeah. So if there's this thing that could look at my treatment and say, I don't know, give me 10 comps to consider, and some I'm sure are going to be better than others, but here's 10 movies I might draw a line to that I hadn't thought of. Here's how much they cost. Here's how much they made. I could see the value in that. It's just one more thing to help you get to the next stage. But I don't think that info helps you as a writer with any of the actual writing of the script, unless you're going into production or actively seeking financing. So I don't think it's going to help, any of those mechanics. And it's also, a lot of this seems like information you could find on your own. You don't have to run it through a robot.
Right. And I feel like the other value might be if the people you're going to sell to trust that software.
Sure.
Then learning how to make that software tell them to buy your screenplay might be valuable for you, maybe not for the movie-going public.
No, but honestly, if this business was predictable, then there would never be any failures. Obviously it's a crapshoot to begin with in that regard.
Right.
But I did want to say, as for the cost of it, though, I mean, I've definitely seen way more expensive services geared for writers. Maybe they offer like a bit more of a personalized experience in their feedback. But nonetheless, if people want to pay $100, that's okay with me. I don't really kind of hold that against them or have a huge issue with the cost of it. But like the guy in the article said, I have a hard time thinking that producers are going to look at any of this information and that it'll be any of, real value to them when they're deciding which scripts to pursue.
Yeah, I like wow with this story. I think that maybe someday down the line, like AI could get to a point where it could offer useful, valuable critique of a script or novel or something. But I feel like it might be that the trend is to gives AI more credit than it's really due. I don't think. I mean, just reading that and reading the sort of stats that it was coming back with on known movies like Fences, saying that Denzel Washington's character was more sympathetic than the other two characters, when any human who saw the movie would say that that's not true at all. And I just don't think that it's worth it right now, especially $100. I mean, imagine putting a novel through and having it scanned for certain words and that sort of thing. I think it just sort of underestimates the really strange alchemy of creating a story, whether it's in a script or anything else. It's like you need human perception to go through that and read it to give you anything remotely useful. A computer isn't capable of that. My own thought is that it will never be capable of doing that, but it certainly isn't right now.
Yeah. Well, and to follow up on this, it looks like now they're not going to go through with that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because
we won.
Exactly. Because of this particular episode. No, but
wow.
There was such an uproar, and a lot of professional screenwriters, probably, the only one I'm positive about is Craig Mazin, who did the Hangover stuff, has the podcast script notes, very vocal about things, and he's kind of been a cheerleader for the Blacklist, which is pretty unusual for him. He tends to be against all the guru stuff. But yeah, so apparently he really let Franklin Leonard have it, and so did a lot of other people. And so they decided, you know what, this is clearly not a good fit for this community, and so they're not going to do it.
I do have a hard time imagining what the actual value of it is as presented, to the writing process. Even knowing the percent level of sympathy towards one of your characters, like that's not a real useful note. That doesn't help you fix it.
Yeah, what does that matter?
Well, it does matter to a degree if you're writing, something that's commercial. I mean, sure, you want to have rootable characters, but I think you'd still be scratching your head as to, having to actually sit down and fix it, based on that type of note.
Right.
And if it said a character was not likable enough, and it's like, oh no, he's really likable, then how do you argue with that, right?
It just feels like it should have been pitched more to studios and producers than writers, and really like lazy and cynical ones at that. Like those examples, they're just terrible. They never should have gone out with that. The Avengers has less of an audience rating than G.I. Jane and Malibu's Most Wanted. Are you kidding me?
But the graph itself didn't make any sense anyway. Like even beyond that, it was just like it was like one scale was creativity, the other was like audience score, and like I don't know. Like the Godfather was super creative, but all these other ones are not like I just didn't even know how to take any any of it. So
yeah, you loved Malibu's Most Wanted, didn't you, Craig?
It's a really good movie, guys. And
audience rating was through the roof.
I voted like 90 times.
Wow. Well, there we go. Well, I don't have anything else. I don't know if you guys do, but we can wrap this up. Obviously, it's always fun having you on, Brian. I hope you can do it again sometime very soon.
Thanks very much. Anytime.
Well, not anytime.
Yeah, let's.
Just when you ask me, I guess.
maybe only when I'm in Atlanta. Right, come find us at neverheardpodcast.com. You can find links to all of our social stuff. We appreciate the iTunes reviews we've got. And if you want to throw up one of those as well, if you haven't got around to it, that'd be great. Helps people find the show. And Craig, I don't know. Maybe we should give Brian the last words. What do you think?
Yeah, let's, Brian, give us some last words.
Yeah, take care, guys.
That was pathetic.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
That was good.